In the vast landscape of global politics and economics, certain events emerge that not only redefine a nation's identity, but also shake the confidence of established powers. The story of Ibrahim Traoré and Burkina Faso's seven-day gold rush to fame is one such moment, a dramatic episode that compressed decades of struggle, resistance, and aspiration into a single week of action that brought the nation to the world's attention. It was not merely about gold, nor was it only about Burkina Faso. It was about what happens when a young leader defies convention, takes on entrenched global systems, and leverages the resources of his people to project an entirely new image for Africa. To understand the significance of what happened in those fateful 7 days, one must look back at the historical relationship between Africa and its mineral wealth. For centuries, Africa's resources were extracted and shipped overseas, enriching empires while impoverishing those who lived closest to the mines. Burkina Faso, landlocked and long considered one of the world's poorest countries, became a microcosm of this broader story. Gold flowed out of the soil, but its people rarely saw the benefit. International mining corporations carved up concessions, foreign banks processed profits, and local communities were left with environmental scars and economic despair. When Ibrahim Traoré assumed leadership, he was acutely aware of this historical injustice. At just 34, his vision was not limited to political survival or military stability. He understood that Burkina Faso's independence would mean little if the country remained economically chained to systems designed to exploit. Gold, the most symbolic and lucrative of the nation's resources, became the starting point for a dramatic assertion of sovereignty. The 7-day gold rush was not a spontaneous accident, but a carefully planned operation designed to send a message to both Burkinabe citizens and the global elite. It began with a bold declaration that all new gold concessions would be suspended until the state itself established direct oversight over production and trade. This announcement sent shockwaves through mining corporations headquartered in Canada, Australia, and Europe, many of which had quietly dominated Burkina Faso's gold industry for decades. Stock prices dipped as investors scrambled to assess what the young captain's move meant for future profits. But the true drama unfolded in the days that followed. Traoré authorized a rapid mobilization of state agencies, military engineers, and local communities to take control of select gold mines that had been operating under controversial contracts. Within 48 hours, reports surfaced of convoys of Burkinabe soldiers entering key mining sites, accompanied not by foreign consultants but by local geologists, economists, and engineers trained within the country and across Africa. For the first time, the image of Burkinabe citizens, not outsiders, standing at the helm of gold production became a national spectacle. By the third day, international media outlets began to frame the events as a radical seizure of assets, some even calling it resource nationalism. Western governments issued cautious statements warning about the importance of honoring international contracts. Yet, within Burkina Faso, the mood was electric. For decades, people had whispered that their land was rich, yet they remained poor. Now, in real time, they were watching their leader take tangible steps to rewrite that reality. On the fourth day, Traoré unveiled a new national policy declaring that a significant percentage of gold profits would bypass traditional foreign routes and instead flow directly into a sovereign development fund. This fund, he explained, would be used to finance schools, hospitals, power plants, and infrastructure, ensuring that the benefits of gold wealth touched every citizen. The symbolism was unmistakable. Gold would no longer serve as a pipeline for foreign enrichment. It would be transformed into the backbone of Burkina Faso's future. What made the policy more daring was his announcement that transactions would no longer be denominated solely in dollars or euros. Inspired by ongoing conversations about Pan-African financial sovereignty, Traoré proposed that gold could be traded using regional currencies, or even through barter agreements with African neighbors. This move aligned with a growing sentiment across the continent that dependence on the dollar not only undermined local economies, but also allowed foreign powers to wield financial dominance over Africa's future. By the fifth day, regional leaders began to take notice. In Mali and Niger, governments that had similarly defied old colonial relationships expressed support for Traoré's bold actions. Conversations about forming a gold-backed regional currency began circulating more seriously. In Ghana, where gold has long been a cornerstone of the economy, analysts debated whether Traoré's approach represented the future for Africa's mineral wealth. Suddenly, Burkina Faso, once considered a small and struggling nation, was setting the agenda for an entire continent. The sixth day brought the sharpest reactions from global powers. Reports emerged of frantic calls between Washington, Paris, and Brussels, as Western governments debated whether Traoré's maneuvers posed a threat not only to corporate profits, but also to the stability of the international financial system. Some voices pushed for sanctions, others for diplomatic engagement. Yet what became clear was that Traoré had managed to shift the balance of negotiation. For the first time in memory, Burkina Faso held leverage against some of the world's most powerful institutions. That same day, Traoré delivered a televised address to his people. In calm but firm tones, he explained that the nation's gold was not a curse, but a gift, one that must be protected and harnessed for the benefit of Burkinabe citizens. He spoke of the sacrifices of ancestors, the struggles of the people, and the dreams of a generation that refused to accept poverty in a land of abundance. The address resonated far beyond Burkina Faso, reaching audiences across Africa who saw in his words a reflection of their own unspoken frustrations. The seventh day marked the climax of the gold rush to fame. Images circulated globally of Burkinabe officials signing new agreements with artisanal miners, granting them state-backed protection and fairer terms for their work. For years, these miners had been marginalized, often exploited by intermediaries or caught in the crossfire of insecurity. Now, under Traoré's leadership, they were being integrated into the national economy as legitimate stakeholders. The symbolism of this moment was profound. A nation that had long been dismissed as peripheral had, in just 1 week, rebranded itself as a beacon of resistance, sovereignty, and possibility. The immediate effects of the gold rush were both symbolic and material. International media could no longer ignore Burkina Faso. From New York to Beijing, headlines carried the name of Ibrahim Traoré, describing him alternately as a populist, a revolutionary, or a disruptor. Within Africa, his fame soared as youth movements, intellectuals, and civil society groups hailed his defiance as proof that change was possible. Economically, Burkina Faso began to see the first fruits of its policy shift as gold. Revenues that once bypassed the treasury now flowed into national accounts. Yet, the deeper significance of the 7-day gold rush lies in the questions it raised about Africa's future. Could this be a model for other nations rich in resources but poor in sovereignty? Could a new generation of African leaders collectively renegotiate the terms of engagement with global powers? And what role would institutions like the African Union or BRICS play in supporting or resisting such radical moves? Traoré's actions exposed not only the fragility of the global resource system, but also the hunger among African people for leaders who prioritize national dignity over foreign approval. In 1 week, he demonstrated that even a small, landlocked country could challenge centuries-old systems of exploitation if guided by courage, strategy, and a willingness to endure international pressure. Of course, the road ahead is not without challenges. Critics warn that Burkina Faso risks diplomatic isolation or economic retaliation. Others argue that the complexities of managing gold wealth could invite corruption or mismanagement, if not carefully handled. Yet even these criticisms underline the central fact: Burkina Faso is no longer invisible. Its actions, for better or worse, matter on the global stage. The story of Burkina Faso's 7-day gold rush to fame is not just about gold or even about one leader. It is about the assertion of agency in a world that has long treated Africa as a passive object of external forces. In Traoré's gamble, one sees the contours of a broader continental awakening, where resources become tools of liberation rather than chains of dependency. As the dust settled after that intense week, the world recognized that something irreversible had begun. Burkina Faso had crossed a threshold, and so had Africa. In just 7 days, gold had ceased to be a symbol of exploitation and instead had become a rallying cry for dignity, sovereignty, and self-determination. And at the center of it all stood Ibrahim Traoré, the young captain whose defiance turned a local struggle into a global story and whose vision ignited hope across a continent longing for transformation. The 7-day gold rush was the spark. The question that remains is whether Africa will fan it into a fire that reshapes the global order, or whether the forces of inertia and opposition will succeed in containing it. Whatever the outcome, history will remember those 7 days as the moment Burkina Faso forced the world to pay attention. And Ibrahim Traoré cemented his place as one of the defining voices of a new African century.